All right, so as promised, we're going to go ahead and skip chapter 14, but to give you a little bit of a heads up here, chapter 14, the two of them, after they wake up from their long sleep on the shore of the river, they go through all of the loot or the truck that they had gathered from the robbers' skiff before they sunk it and realize they've got some pretty good stuff. And then the two of them get into conversations about books. And Huck brings up kings and queens of other countries. And Jim says, well, there ain't no kings in our country, right? And Huck says, no, we don't have kings. And they get on this conversation of French. And Jim doesn't realize that other countries have different languages here at this point. And he goes, French? You know what? They don't speak the same language as us. And Huck tries to explain it to him. And Jim and Huck have this pretty hilarious exchange about Huck trying to explain to him, yeah, well, Huck says, cats don't have the same language as us, do they? Neither do cows. And cats and cows don't have the same language as each other, so they can't talk to one another. Well, both of them start to argue, and they figure it's best if they just give it up because they can't seem to teach one another anything about each other's point of view. So, though it's funny, it's not entirely useless. It's just general nonsense that doesn't really add to the overwhelming tell all of the story. So we're going to go ahead and jump into chapter 15, guys, as we continue. This chapter really should get you thinking about Huck's moral high ground and where he thinks he is in the area of making good and bad decisions. And I'll let you be the judge of that here. You make that determination. All right, chapter 15. We judged that 3 nights more would fetch us to Cairo at the bottom of Illinois, where the Ohio River comes in, and that's what we was going after. We would sell the raft and get on a steamboat and go way up Ohio amongst the free states, and then be out of trouble. Well, the second night a fog begun to come on, and we made for a towhead to tie to, for it wouldn't do no good to try and run in fog. But when I paddled ahead in the canoe with a line to make fast, there weren't anything but little saplings to tie to. I passed the line around one of them right on the edge of the cut bank, but there was a stiff current, and the raft come booming down so lively she tore it out by the roots, and away she went. I see the fog closing down, and it made me so sick and scared I couldn't budge for almost half a minute, it seemed to me. And then there weren't no raft in sight. You couldn't see 20 yards. I jumped into the canoe and run back to the stern and grabbed the paddle and set her back a stroke, but she didn't come. I was in such a hurry I hadn't untied her. I got up and tried to untie her, but I was so excited my hands shook so I couldn't hardly do anything with them. So as soon as I got started, I took out after the raft, hot and heavy, right down the towhead. That was all right as far as it went, but the towhead weren't 60 yards long, and the minute I flew by foot of it, I shot into the solid white fog and had no more idea which way I was going than a dead man. It's got a bunch of thick fog. Huck's not able to manage both the raft and his boat. So he's getting frustrated. When he was referring to excited, it's like that nervous energy. It's what he's referring to. Thinks it won't do to paddle. First, I know I'll run to the bank for a towhead or something. I gotta sit still and float. Yet it's mighty fidgety business having to hold your hands still at such a time. I whooped and listened. Away down there somewheres I hear a small whoop, and then up comes my spirits. I went tearing after it, listening sharp to hear it again. The next time it come, I see I weren't heading for it, but heading away to the right of it. And the next time I was heading away to the left of it, and not gaining on it much either, for I was flying around this way and to the other, but I wasn't going straight ahead all the time. I did wish the fool would think to beat a tin pan and beat it all the time, but he never did, and it was the still places between the whoops that was making trouble for me. Well, I fought along, and directly I hear the whoops behind me, and I was a tangled good now. That was somebody else's whoop, or else I was turned around. I throwed the paddle down. I heard the whoop again. It was behind me yet, but in a different place, and it kept coming. It kept changing its place, and I kept answering until by and by it was in front of me again, and I knowed the current had swung the canoe head down the stream, and it was all right. If that was Jim and not some other raftsman hollering. I couldn't tell nothing about the voices in a fog, or nothing don't look natural nor sound natural in a fog. Well, the whooping went on, and in about a minute I come a booming down on a cut bank with smoky ghosts of big trees on it, and the current throwed me off to the left, shot by, amongst a lot of snags that fairly roared, and the current was tearing them off swift. In another second or two it was solid white and still again. I sat perfectly still then, listening to my heart thump, and I reckon I didn't draw breath while it thumped 100. So Jim and Huck have been separated by this fog here, guys, and Huck has gotten himself kind of estranged, and he's concerned. He's worried. He's not going to make his way back to Jim. I just give up then. I know what the matter was. That cut bank was an island, and Jim had gone down to the other side of it. It weren't no towhead that you could float by in 10 minutes. It was the other big timber of a regular island. It might be 5 or 6 mile long and more than a half-mile wide. Well, I kept quiet with my ears cocked about 15 minutes, I reckon. I was floating along, of course, 4 or 5 mile an hour, but you don't ever think of that. No, you feel like you're laying dead still on the water, and if a little glimpse of snag slips by, you don't think to yourself how fast you're going, but you catch your breath and think, my, how that snag's tearing along. And if you think it ain't dismal and lonesome out in the fog that way by yourself in the night, you try it once. You'll see. Next, for about a half an hour, I whoops now and then, and last I hears the answer a long ways off and tries to follow it, but I couldn't do it. And I directly judged that I got the rest of the towheads, for I hadn't let I had little dim glimpses of them on both sides, sometimes just a narrow channel between, and some of them I couldn't see. I knowed I was there because I'd hear the wash of the current against the old dead brush and trash that hangs over the banks. Well, I warn't long losing the whoops down amongst the towheads, and I only tried to chase them a little while anyway, because it was worse than chasing a jack-o'-lantern. You never know a sound dodge around so and swap places so quick and so much. I had to claw away from the bank pretty lively, 4 or 5 minutes, to keep from knocking the islands out the river. So I judged the raft must be butting into the bank every now and then, or else I couldn't get further ahead and clear out of hearing. It was floating a little faster than I was. Well, it seemed to be an open river again by and by, and I couldn't hear no sign or a whoop nowheres. I reckon Jim had fetched up on a snag maybe, and it was all up with him. I was good and tired, so I laid down in the canoe and said I wouldn't bother no more. I didn't want to go to sleep, of course, but I was so sleepy I couldn't help it, so I thought I would just take one little cat nap. But I reckon it was more than a cat nap, for when I waked up the stars was shining bright, the fog was all gone, and I was spinning down a big bend stern first. First, I didn't know where I was. I thought I was dreaming, and then things begun to come back to me, and they seemed to come up dim out of last week. It was a monstrous big river here, with the tallest and thickest kind of timber on both banks, just a solid wall, as well as I could see by the stars. I took away downstream and seen a black speck on the water. I took out after it, but when I got to it, it weren't nothing but a couple of saw logs made fast together. Then I see another speck, and I chased that. Then another, and this time I was right. Whew, it was the raft. When I got to it, Jim was settled there with his head down between his knees asleep, with his right hand hanging over the stern oar. The other oar was smashed off, and the raft was littered up with leaves and branches and dirt. So she'd had a rough time. I made fast and laid down under Jim's nose on the raft, and I begun to gap and stretch my fist out against Jim and says, "Hello, Jim. Have I been asleep? Why don't you stir me up?" "Goodness gracious, is that you, Huck? And you ain't dead? Oh, you ain't drowned? You's going back again? It's too good to be true, honey. It's too good for true. Let me look at you, child. Let me feel you. Oh, no, you ain't dead. Whew, you's going back and living the South, just me and same old Huck. Same old Huck. Thanks to goodness." "What's the matter with you, Jim? You'd have been a drinking?" "Drinking? Has I been drinking? Has I had a chance to be drinking?" "Well, then, what makes you talk so wild?" "How does that talk wild?" "How? Why, hain't you been talking about my coming back and all that stuff, as if I'd been gone away?" Before we continue reading here, Huck really had gone away. He'd been stuck in the fog, and then he'd done fell asleep. And how happy is Jim to finally see him again? He, who had also fallen asleep after the two of them had been split, Jim on the raft and Huck in the canoe. Well, now Huck has done gotten under Jim and said, "Hey now, what are you talking about? I've been here the whole time." What's going on here, and why would Huck do such a thing? Let's continue to read. Huck Finn, you look me there in the eye. Look at me right in the eye. Hain't you been gone away?" "Gone away? Why, what in the notion do you mean? I hain't been gone anywheres. Where would I go?" "Well, looky here, boss, there's something wrong. There is it me? Or who is I? And is I here? Or what is I? Now that's what I want to know." "Well, I think you're here, plain enough, but I think you're tangle-headed old fool, Jim." I is I? Well, you answer me this. Didn't you tote out the line in the canoe for to make fast down the towhead? No, I didn't. What towhead? I ain't seen no towhead. You ain't seen no towhead. I ain't seen no towhead. You ain't seen no towhead? Looky here. Didn't the line pull Rose in the raft and go humming down the river and leave you in the canoe behind me in the fog? What fog? Why, the fog! The fog that's been around all night. And why didn't you whoop? And didn't I whoop and tell me got mixed up in the islands and one of us got lost to the other and just as good lost Kissy didn't one was? And didn't I bust up again and lost them islands and have a terrible time getting them most drowned? Now ain't that so, boss? Ain't it so? You answer me that. Well, this is too many for me, Jim. I ain't seen no fog, nor the islands, no troubles, no nothing. I've been sitting here talking with you all night until you went to sleep about 10 minutes ago, and I reckon done the same. You couldn't have got drunk in that time, so of course you've been dreaming. Is that true? Was this really all a dream? Think about Jim's reaction. Dang, fetch it. How's I going to dream all that in 10 minutes? Well, hang it all. Did you dream it? Because there ain't any of it did happen. But Huck, it's all just as plain to me as... It don't make no difference how plain it is. There ain't nothing in it. I know, because I've been here all the time. Jim didn't say nothing for about 5 minutes, but sat there studying over it. Then he says, Well, Dan, I reckon I did dream it, Huck. But dog my cats if it ain't the powerfulest dream I ever see. And I ain't ever had no dream before that's tired me out like this one. Oh, well, that's all right, because them dream does tire a body like everything sometimes, but this one was a staving dream. Tell me all about it, Jim. So Jim went to work and told me the whole thing right through, just as it happened, only he painted it up considerable. And then he said he must start in and terpret it, because it sent for a warning. He said that the first towhead stood for a man that would try to do us some good, but the current was another man that would get us away from him. The whoops was warning that would come to us every now and then, and if we didn't try hard to make out to understand it, they'd just take it to bad luck instead of keeping us out of it. A lot of towheads was troubles we was going to get into, and the quarrelsome people and all kinds of mean folks. But if we minded our business and didn't talk back and aggravate them, then we could pull through and get out of the fog and get the big clear river, which is the free states. It wouldn't have no more trouble. Jim is interpreting his own dream, which really happened. As the reader, we know that. We know Huck scrambled to try and find Jim again. So what exactly is Huck doing here to Jim? And what sort of trouble is this causing Jim in his heart? Okay. Now, Jim, in his interpretation, have you guys ever seen anything like this before? Like psychics or tarot card readers? Because that's kind of what it sounds like to me. He's taken a look at every element of his dream, and he's decided that each one of those things must mean something quite important. Well, it had clouded up pretty dark just after I got onto the raft, but it was clearing up again now. Oh, well, that's all interpreted well enough as far as it goes, Jim, I says, but what does these things stands for? It was the leaves and rubbish on the raft and smashed door. You could see them first rate now. Jim looked at the trash, and then he looked at me and back at the trash again, and he had got the dream fixed so strong in his head that he couldn't seem to shake it loose and get the facts back into place again right away. But when he did get the thing straightened around, he looked at me steady without ever smiling and says, What do they stand for? I was going to tell you when I got worn out with work and with the calling for you and went to sleep, my heart was most broke because you was lost and I didn't know you no more and what was going to come of me in the raft. And when I wake up and find you back again all safe and sound, the tears come and I could have got down on my knees and kissed your foot. I was so thankful. And all you was thinking about was how you could make a fool of old Jim with a lie. That truck, that is trash. And trash is what people in the dirt puts on the head for their friends and makes them ashamed. Well, then he got up slow and he walked to the wigwam and went in there without saying anything but that. But that was enough. It made me feel so mean I could almost kissed his foot to get him to take it back. It was 15 minutes before I could work myself up to go and humble myself but I'd done it. And I weren't ever sorry for it afterwards. Or I weren't ever sorry for it afterwards neither. I didn't do him no more mean tricks, and I wouldn't done that one if I'd knowed it would make him feel that way. So we can connect to this, right, guys? Think about times when you've maybe played a trick on your friend or tried to do something that you thought was funny, but maybe it hurt somebody else's feelings. And here, Huck has done that to Jim. And poor Jim really thought he'd lost Huck. And when he woke up to find Huck back on the raft, he was quite happy, only for Huck to go and take this moment to play a kind of a nasty trick on him. So, when you go in to answer your reflection questions today, don't forget I'm looking for 5 sentences, guys, and you get to choose which question it is you want to respond to. Your questions for today's lesson are on slide 8. The first question is, why does Huck stop and try to save the murderers, and how does it reflect on his character? Remember, we're talking about influence and morals here. What do you think about Huck's idea that he might become a murderer, and how much does that weigh on him? In chapter 15, what happens to their relationship? Why does it take him 15 minutes to apologize? At this point, what do we think has become of Huck and Jim's relationship, their friendship? And what do you think about Huck's interpretation of laws in this book, things that are meant to keep us safe? Actually, sorry, y'all. This question doesn't belong here. You guys need to just worry about these first 2 questions. Pick whichever question you would like. 5 sentences, guys, and I'm looking for you to go back into the text and support whatever ideas you come to the conclusion of. Make sure you're supporting that with material here from the book. I will see you guys again soon.